Underwriting, whether for investments, loans, or insurance, relies on accurate risk assessment and forecasting of financial value of a real estate asset. Mistakes here can be costly, both financially as well as reputationally. Luckily, there is a way you can avoid them. I'm Anton from Intel CRE, and in this video, we'll go over 8 of the most common underwriting mistakes that we see our clients make and the safety measures you can use to avoid them. Let's begin with mistake number 1. This is assuming that we can raise rents quickly without considering the market's actual supply, demand, the tenant income levels, as well as the realistic timeline for the rent increase to take place at our property. Just because your rents are significantly below the market doesn't mean that your property can operate at the market levels tomorrow. Make sure you research the trends affecting your market, noting any rent control laws, and work with the conservative assumptions for your proforma rent growth. The timeline on how you're going to grow your current rents to the proforma values should be realistic. In other words, the stabilization period must be realistic. Do we need to do any capex or renovation projects at our property in order to achieve the market rent? How long would these projects take? And how soon after these projects are finished can we find new tenants for our property? All these things must be carefully considered and accounted for with longer timelines in your underwriting for rent stabilization and with lower proforma rent growth rate. The next big mistake is underestimating expenses and ignoring deferred maintenance at the property. This is forgetting about repairs, turnover costs, property management fees, and especially capital expenditures like changing the roof, HVAC, plumbing, or any electrical replacements. Only once you walk the property and have a general inspection done do you really know the scope of work that the property really requires. If, for instance, the electrical panels are old, you'll have to replace them to avoid any liability issues, and this could be a significant project both time-wise and cost-wise. Similar projects like unit rehabs will definitely increase your vacancy and hence cause significant rent loss. Property management fees are generally around 5% of your gross operating income, but for properties with higher number of units, you'll probably need an on-site manager or janitor that's definitely going to result in at least $24,000 of annual expense. And so make sure you understand the state of the property and the scope of the work required to bring your property to the desired standard, and make sure to include the associated costs and timelines for these projects into your underwriting projections. Let's look at the third mistake, ignoring realistic vacancy rates. Have you ever used the perfect 0% or 2% vacancy to model your property when the market average is around 5, 6, 7, or 8%? Well, especially for small multifamily properties, having 1 or 2 units vacant for a prolonged time is going to result in significant vacancy and income loss. So always make sure that you research real vacancy rates in your market and work with the conservative, pessimistic assumptions in your model to avoid miscalculating realistic returns of the property. The next mistake concerns your deal financing, and in particular, not stress testing your financing and interest rates. Locking in rosy financing assumptions without modeling what happens if rates rise before closing or refinancing is precisely where this mistake happens. Make sure you know where your financing terms are in your market these days, and don't forget to stress test your underwriting with multiple scenarios with higher interest rates. Also, when your property has a higher current vacancy, a lot of lenders would actually use your current rent with that high vacancy figure in order to calculate your DCR, and in turn might quote you with a much lower loan-to-value or LTV as you're imagining. So the safest approach would be to work with your realistic current rent figures and also to stress test financing, each underwriting for your financing rates and other financing terms. One additional point, if you're planning to use an interest-only loan where you wouldn't pay the principal payments in the first few months or years, make sure that you also look at your deal from the perspective of that loan being a fully amortized loan where you're paying both the principal as well as the interest rates, and make sure that the DCR of 1.25 or higher is met as well. Let's go to the next mistake. Using sellers or brokers' numbers without verification. Yes, this is a big one, and we're talking about relying on trailing 12-month statements or the offering memorandum without checking utility bills, tax records, and actual rent rolls. The selling side often wants to make the deal seem better than it is, and brokers use unrealistically good proforma assumptions to present their deals. This is why it's very important for you to challenge their numbers in your own underwriting. By researching your own rent, sales, and expense comparables, as well as finding out the operating benchmarks for a given market and specializing in that property type and that property class. And here goes another big mistake: forgetting about property taxes resetting. In many markets, property taxes jump significantly after the sale, and missing this can wipe out projected cash flow, sometimes entirely. Make sure you understand not only what was the base for the property taxes last year, but more importantly, what kind of property taxes can you expect for the next year and the years to come. If the property gets reassessed for tax purposes after the sale, make sure you know what the millage rates and effective tax rates and their growth rates are going to be moving forward. The next mistake is harder to spot but can change the deal return significantly. Overlooking market cycle risks. This would mean projecting stable or rising occupancy rates and rents when local job losses, construction booms, and regulatory changes could hit the demand. To avoid this, your best bet would be to look at past cycles in your local, nationwide, global markets and try to account for how much market downturn can affect your forecast in the time period you're projecting for. Another option would be to consult with an expert in the market and incorporate the risk into your analysis and stress testing. Finally, especially when you're underwriting for investments, you can never be too cautious when it comes to your exit strategy. The last mistake is skipping your exit strategy math. Not running the numbers on what happens if you need to sell earlier, refinance later, or hold this deal through a market downturn. Keep track of how your net operating income can grow realistically and what kind of exit cap rate can you expect in each year of your hold term, making sure that if you end up selling or exiting this deal earlier, the returns are still going to make sense to you. It is absolutely necessary to stress test and run sensitivity analysis in your underwriting for the most crucial assumptions that we're making, especially assumptions such as the exit cap rate, as these are going to have the biggest effect on the deal returns. Don't forget to stress test for refinance cap rates as well. And in the previous mistake, we discussed market downturn a bit, though nobody has a crystal ball. And as with any other type of investment, no real estate investment comes without a certain level of risk. To summarize, we've discussed 8 of the most common mistakes that our clients make when underwriting their deals. When you're underwriting your next deal, make sure that you have a good grasp of where the market is heading and what kinds of assumptions you're making around income growth, your taxes, expenses, interest rates, and your exit strategy. Make sure you confirm multiple sources and use conservative numbers. And very importantly, stress test, aka run sensitivity analysis for your underwriting. Do not turn a blind eye to the bad side of the deal. In fact, if the bad side of the deal is still acceptable, you might actually have something worth pursuing further. Thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next video.